Alien types, intelligent life forms that Nancy Lieder actually met. Everyone has heard of the Greys, and some people think that there are just one type of aliens, which are gray, but actually there are at least 15 types of gray aliens. The star system called Zeta Reticulum has an advanced species that you've probably heard of from Nancy Lieder. She has a website called zetatalk.com, and she tells us what's going to happen next in this pole shift. The poles don't actually shift, the crust shifts, and it changes the position of north and south relative to the Earth's crust. So that's what we're going to get, a quick shift in the crust on the surface of the Earth. What's north will not be north anymore. What's west will not be west. I've been reading her page for years, and she said that Indonesia will sink 80 feet, and Indonesia is sinking. Only the government there isn't telling the people the truth, and they are calling it flooding due to rain. But actually Jakarta is sinking, and motorcycles are riding in water knee-deep in places. Go to zetatalk.com and click on the free newsletter, then click on Archives to read all of the predictions Nancy has made over the past several years. She has been connected to the Zetas for decades, and they introduced her to many aliens. So if you rely on only one person to get your view of what aliens are like, then you're limited to one testimony by someone who may have been terrified, may have been abducted. It's also possible that the UFO was one of our own, and it was made by Lockheed or another defense contractor who gets paid and keeps their mouths shut about the technology that our government has. When our own government abducts people and tortures them in order to spread the word that aliens are evil, you don't really get the truth. But what do you expect from government? Propaganda, yes, but the truth, never. The only time you ever get the truth is when it's leaked. Nancy Lieder of zetatalk.com met many aliens, and on July 15, 1995, she published her descriptions of some of them, and I'd like to read it to you if you have a few minutes. The web page where you will find it is hard to locate on her website because she has 1 trillion gigabytes of information there, and I think she's been writing for about 61 years. I'm not sure, just joking. There's a lot of information at her site, and I have not read it all, but I read this part, and I knew it was there, so I was able to find it today, and I'd like to make a video of it so that you all know about it as well. You won't find any information about aliens as interesting as this is, I think. She met many types of intelligent creatures, and only one made her faint. You might ask, what kind of creature would make Nancy Lieder faint? As I recall, he evolved in a swamp with mosquitoes and other insects flying all around him, and whenever he was hungry, he would just inhale some and then go to sleep. His food came to him. Let's get into the list now and see what we have. Okay, you can see the web address where I got this at the top of the page, zetatalk.com/worlds/w15.htm. Zetatalk, variety of life forms. Note, written July 15, 1995. Our emissary, Nancy, will describe her hypnotic recall of some of the life forms she has been presented with. Start Nancy's recall. Greek god was presented in the lineup of hominids. He made Arnold Schwarzenegger look like a 97-pound weakling. He was wearing a Roman legionnaire's outfit and was attractively proportioned. What a hunk. My comment to him was, no wonder they thought you were gods. Horned-toed man was presented in the lineup of hominids. He was less than 4 foot tall and wore clothing. His skin was covered by large humped plates, similar in appearance to the top of a turtle shell, but with more flexibility. When asked, he explained that his home planet was a dry, rocky place. There were 2 of these, one smaller than the other, but I failed to ask if they were from different planets or were different sexes. Broomstick Man is the very tall and skinny alien from Close Encounters, the one with a small, thin head. He appeared to be in charge of presenting the hominid lineup. He seemed responsible and sensitive to the varying discomforts and expectations of the group. Little Green Man was presented in the lineup of hominids. He was less than 4 feet tall, had a round green face but thin body, and had splayed fingers from a small round hand. He wore a plain blue outfit. Slinky Man was presented in the lineup of hominids. He was short and appeared to have no neck, wrists, or ankles. All was one round tubular shape like connected slinkies. He wore an outfit with a high collar, and his hair was clumped and still black, standing straight up along the back of the head in peaks. I asked about his home planet, but received for an answer this movement. His right leg stretched out to twice its length and landed to the side, then retracted and came back. He stretched like a slinky, without sign of bones inside. Persevering, I next got the following motion. His head rose up on a stretching neck, 2 feet above the shoulders. His neck didn't get thin. All just rose up like a slinky. Broomstick Man explained telepathically that I had offended Slinky Man because I hadn't bowed before talking to him. I bowed deeply from the waist and begged his forgiveness and got warm, happy vibes from Slinky Man telepathically. I never did get my question answered. I asked the Zetas about him afterwards, and they explained this race is from the 3rd density planet, not mature as our planet is not mature. Where we are violent, they get into a lot of posturing and political shits. The Zetas said, very tiring. I don't understand that one. Chicken Man was presented in the lineup of hominids. He looked just like a flesh-colored chicken without feathers, but upon close examination I saw there were toes on the feet and fingers on the end of wing-like arms. There was no beak, just a pointed face. When I asked what his planet was like, I was given a telepathic view of a bleak, rocky place. I was told that this was a female who was hugging and protective of the next hominid, a male. Tiny Man was presented in the lineup of hominids. He stood about 1 foot tall and was flesh-colored, with a rounded head and short limbs. He seemed terribly shy, and when spoken to would titter and look at the floor. Chicken Man did all the talking. Swamp Creature was presented later after the presentation of the hominids, where the presentations were moving to other variations of intelligent creatures. He looked like a creature from the Black Lagoon, except that he was green, not black, a gentle giant in and out of the water. Octopus Man had a body and tentacles like an octopus. He was a chocolate brown on the outside and cream-colored on the underside of the tentacles. I was delighted to find him very chatty. I asked what his home planet was like, and was telepathically shown a planet of water, with only an occasional rock sticking out, very windy above the water line, and inhospitable where the water was warm and inviting. We shook hands at the end, hand to tentacle. He had a special pink tentacle, like a long earthworm that wrapped around my wrist to improve communications, it seemed. I had no problem with that. It was not the life form, it was the vibes coming from the soul within that matters. Beanbag Man. Introduction to this intelligent alien caused me to faint for the first time in my life. The Zetas dragged me to my feet, and the introduction proceeded. Beanbag Man has 2 eyes in a broad round head and a single mouth. Asked what his home planet was like, I received a telepathic explanation of a green hothouse kind of place. Beanbag Man looked like a round green blob with no bones. When I asked what he ate, I got a telepathic view of a bug-like beetle being crushed. I gave Beanbag Man a telepathic view, an explanation of our custom of shaking hands, and he extended one of about 50 little claws that fringed around his waist. After a moment's hesitation, I took and shook one of the claws. I asked about technology and didn't get anything back. He did not come for this visit on his own power. I asked about housing and got a telepathic scene of Beanbag Man sort of flowing along the ground toward a sheltered place along an embankment. Saying goodbye, Beanbag Man moved away from me, flowing along by heaving parts of his body forward and backward along the ground. Beanbag Man was all green except for his bottom, where he abutted the ground, and this was black. A pleasant fellow, meaning me no harm. Amoeba Man was light green and without form or distinction. He had no markings. He was on the floor and flowed parts of itself around my ankles so communication could occur. A picture of a rocky world where life only occurs in the crevices was relayed to me. Amoeba Man had to lay low to survive. Vampire Man looked like a hominid flea. He stood 4 feet high, with stubby little legs and arms, and gray leathery skin. The outstanding feature was 2 long gray tusks coming down from his face about 4 inches apart. My understanding was that this was the equivalent of our vultures, and that it eats the dead by sucking fluids from the corpse. He seemed negative to me in that he wanted to intimidate, but most bullies backed away when really confronted. I grabbed a tusk and flipped him onto his back. Not being agile, it took some minutes to right himself, his stubby arms and legs flailing. Dino Man looked like a small Tyrannosaurus Rex, but was no taller than a large man. He was dark green, with a ridge down his back, and stood erect while leaning back on a large fat tail used for balance. The end of his tail had a couple of pointed yellow barbs, which looked fluid-filled and puffy. The mouth was lined with many teeth. He was not a telepathic conversationalist, except to insist that I was to obey him, a command he repeated several times. When this was refused, he opened his mouth to show all of his teeth, leaning towards me. When he found he could not intimidate me, he lost interest and turned his back. What a story. Cockroach Man emerged from the blue-green pool where he had been floating face down. The pool appeared to be thick with algae. His back was smooth and rounded like a turtle shell, with no sign of wings. He was gray all over. He stood erect on a rear set of legs, looking like a giant cockroach on the front, with several sets of legs and arms, ending in 2 toe fingers, with a couple of round eyes at the head. He was not particularly communicative. Okay, that's it for Nancy Leader's description of aliens that she met. Thanks for watching.